Well, hello, eXp. I'm Brian Ellington, Chief Learning Officer for eXp Realty. Hey, welcome to the eXp Executive Masterclass. This is Leading Impactful Masterminds. So glad that you could join us. Hey, as we get started, in the comments for the YouTube channel here, you'll notice there's a link. That's the participant guide for today's session. Please go ahead and just grab that now so that you can follow along with us as we go, and then you'll have that as a resource as well later on after this to refresh your memory. Any things that we didn't necessarily cover that are in the participant guide, all great stuff. And there's also links in that participant guide for other great resources as well. So do please grab that again in the comments section of the YouTube channel. So let's get started here. And I have a quick question for you before we jump in. In 3 words or less, what's the difference between a not so good mastermind and a great mastermind? 3 words or less, the difference between a not so good mastermind and a great mastermind. Now I'll hit on that in just a second. As you're thinking about that, hi, Brian Ellington, Chief Learning Officer for eXp Realty, joining you live from dreary Austin, Texas today, where I live with my beautiful wife, Marette, and my 4 amazing kids. I am today the Chief Learning Officer of eXp Realty. I've been a lifelong realtor in the real estate profession. My mom was an agent for 30 plus years. I swore, of course, I'd never get into sales, and obviously I got into sales. I was with Keller Williams for 15 years as their Chief Learning Officer, Chief Operating Officer of their international franchising, and Chief Products Officer. Went to Realty and Anywhere, ran training and coaching for all their brands, was COO and Chief Development Officer for Century 21. And finally saw the light and got to eXp as quickly as I could. Happy to be here. And I'm really excited about today's topic. This is an amazing opportunity we have at eXp of leveraging the wisdom in the room of all of our amazing agents by hosting great masterminds locally. Great way to build synergy with agents and also get great wisdom passed around the agents to help everybody grow their business. So now I want to just kind of briefly give you my answer to that question that I asked you. The 3 things, 3 words or less. This is the difference between a good mastermind and a great mastermind. And for me, those are facilitator, participant, and structure. Facilitator, participant, and structure. Now, we're going to talk at length about all 3. Now, whether you've never hosted a mastermind before, or if you've done many of them and are just looking for a few great pro tips, we've got something great for you within this session. This will be recorded and it will live on our YouTube channel, so you'll always have access to that. And you've got the participant guide. Now, before we get started, my legally implanted shock device from eXp Legal is going off, and so I need to remind you, neither of us friends look good in orange onesies, so let's make sure we follow all applicable laws, federal, state, local, and also just be good stewards, not only for yourself, for your clients, for eXp, and all of our agents as well. And as we get started, I also want to share with you our agenda. Here's what we're going to cover today. I'll give you a brief introduction to masterminds, but we're going to talk about how we plan and prepare to lead a mastermind, because that's a big portion of having a successful mastermind is that planning and preparation stage. We're going to talk about then facilitating them. So once we plan and prepare, then when we get to day of, how do we have the most powerful experience we can, and how do we make sure that happens as facilitators? And then finally, we'll talk about follow-up. What do we do after the mastermind and make sure people continue to get value from it? All right, so introductions to mastermind. If you've not done one, it's a unique opportunity. This is not training, right? Masterminds are not training. And while most of us can probably lead a group discussion of some sort, we probably do that on a regular basis. Having a powerful mastermind is a really different thing than just an open conversation. So what is a mastermind? Well, it's a group of individuals that come together to share knowledge, strategies, and resources with one another to achieve a goal. And the whole idea is that the collective intelligence of others leads to greater success than working alone. In the way in which I think of it, the wisdom is in the room. Anytime you gather together a powerful group of agents, there's going to be brilliance in the room and a variety of different sections of the topic, right? People will approach things different ways. And our job as a facilitator of a great mastermind is really to bring that wisdom out first, and then second, to help shape that wisdom into action. Both equally important things to do as a facilitator. When done well, the mastermind is the very epitome of that old adage about the sum being greater than its parts. And when we talk about masterminds, we can't not mention Napoleon Hill, one of the early proponents of masterminds. What he said was, no mind is complete by itself. It needs contact and association with other minds to grow and expand. And that's absolutely right. So talking about benefits of the mastermind, and if you're here, you're probably going, okay, bud, I already know the benefits of the mastermind. That's why I'm here. But when you look at these benefits, it really is instructive for us to think about, okay, well then us as facilitators, how do we conduct ourselves to make sure that these benefits come out? So Napoleon Hill talked about this in the mastermind principle. What he said was collective intelligence, that, we're combining all of our various wisdoms and perspective. That's a big part of this. Support and encouragement. Man, that is something that you really get from a great mastermind, especially an ongoing mastermind series. Builds such tremendous community. And please don't overlook that particular piece. It cannot be undervalued, because that becomes a really big component of a great ongoing mastermind. Enhanced problem solving, different ways of running masterminds, right? You can run one where you're focused on only what's working for one another, and you can focus on one for what challenges are we facing. And you can mix and match in any given mastermind, talking about those two different takes on it. Regardless, what we are ultimately doing is helping to solve people's problems by bringing a bunch of brains to that problem. Access to resources and networks. Who I know is not who you know. And if we can combine those, we can really have a powerful network. And the resources that I might bring for my clients, you might have very different resources. And by leveraging one another, we can really bring great things to our clients. Accelerated learning and growth, that seems kind of obvious, right? But really what we're trying to do, like Isaac Newton said, is stand on the shoulder of giants so we can see further. And then finally, synergy. Just bringing together a great group, building toward a common interest and a common goal. So this is also instructive as we're talking about how do we facilitate masterminds. This is sort of a tale of two masterminds, right? If you've attended multiple masterminds, not all masterminds are created equal. I've had the great distinct pleasure of being a part of a number of mastermind career groups in my various roles over the course of 20 plus years in the real estate industry. And I can tell you, I've been part of some really great ones. I've been part of a few not so great ones. And the difference really is about those three things I talked about: facilitator, participant, structure. So take a look and listen as we talk about this. Participants are wanting, this is in mastermind number one, a not so great mastermind. Participants are wanting to take the conversation in a variety of different and often competing directions, and too much time is spent deciding on what to discuss. When we bring people together, we have a limited amount of time. And if we're not all on the same page, that can be problematic. It's not that everybody has to get along. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, disagreement is great in a mastermind, but making sure that we're all there to accomplish the same goal can be a great component. And if not, that's really challenging. Facilitators struggle to build energy and momentum, and there's long, awkward silences where participants are hesitant to respond. That can be really weird. That can be really weird and counter to the purpose of a mastermind. The participants are unfamiliar with one another, and some of them kind of think that they've got the secret sauce, and so they don't want to share, and they're fearful. Again, that's part of the negative experiences that you can have in a mastermind, but there are things that you can do to make sure that that doesn't happen, that the positives come out. Group exercises are slow and unfocused. I've been to several masterminds where the mastermind leader dismisses the groups into smaller groups, and everybody just sits there staring at one another going, what are we supposed to be doing? The facilitator is speaking more than the participants. Masterminds are not training. As a mastermind facilitator, the thing I try to keep in the back of my head is I only need to speak enough to get the conversation going and keep the conversation going. And if I'm speaking any more than that, that's really about me and my ego and not about the people in the room. And then finally, participants walk away with a couple of okay ideas, but they're disjointed and they don't really understand what then to go do about it. So mastermind number 2 is really what we want, where the topics of the discussion are quickly decided, and sometimes even before we get in the room. And we're going to talk about how we make that happen. The participants are at ease and relaxed with their peers, and they're eager to share, and hands are going up anytime there's a question asked or somebody wants to seek wisdom in the room. There's people ready to step forward. The participants build on one another's comments. Now, again, they don't always have to agree with one another, but when they disagree, they're being respectful, and they're holding space for that opinion and that way of work that's been successful for that one agent. They're just sharing an alternative perspective. Or when they agree, they're saying, that old improv, yes, and I love that point. And the way that I approach that is to also do X. That's a great way of communication in the mastermind group, where you're building on one another and really coming at some great solutions. The participants walk out with a strategic plan of what to go do and takeaways that make them glad that they were there and looking forward to whatever next mastermind opportunities there are. And then finally, the collaboration doesn't stop once the mastermind is over. I can tell you, I still have great friends today that I met in mastermind groups that we regularly talk with one another, even though that mastermind isn't even going anymore. That's what we want when we talk about building community here. Now, the difference here is not luck, friends. It is about our skill and how we set things up. So let's break that down, starting with planning and preparation to lead a mastermind. Now, in your participant guide, you'll see the whole list of things we're about to go through if you're following along there. Set objectives, identify your targets, select the topics, and so forth. So let's jump in and talk about setting objectives. Well, what in the world would you mean by that? What do you mean set an objective for a mastermind? Well, a question for you. Whatever mastermind you're contemplating hosting, or whatever mastermind you currently are part of that you want to make better, why are you wanting to host that mastermind to begin with? What's the outcome that you want from it? Are we going to tackle a specific challenge, or are we going to help a particular group with a whole set of challenges? Is your mastermind to help eXp agents only, or are we going to be inclusive and invite others in the community that are not yet with eXp to come in and help and be part of the conversation? So I'll give you some examples of what I mean by this. So I'm part of eXp's Expand Investing Mastermind with Brendan Brittingham that we just set up. It's a great group that's focused purely on agents working with investors or becoming real estate investors themselves, right? And the objective of that mastermind is to help agents create other pillars of income for themselves outside of their real estate sales by leveraging their real estate sales, right? Very clear objective. However, I also help lead eXp's Top 250 Solo Agent Mastermind. Now, the objective of that is to provide a forum for our best of the best. Again, these are the top 250 solo agents in the eXp ecosystem. And so we want to provide a forum for them to come together and share with one another and help each other grow. We want to create that community among them as well. Now, a secondary objective of that particular mastermind also is that so eXp leadership can be in the room and listen and hear what our top people are challenged by and what they need, and be able to be there to provide solutions as well. And then I also lead eXp's Team Mastery monthly virtual mastermind with Candace Garcia, our senior director of the university. Now that's every third Wednesday of the month, by the way, team leaders only, every third Wednesday of the month. Back next Wednesday at 12 p.m. Central, we're going to be doing our next one. Now, this one is a virtual mastermind. And here we do things a little differently. We tackle a different topic each month. And so, for example, this coming Wednesday, we're going to be talking about coaching and accountability for a team from a team leader, right? How do you hold your team accountable? How do you coach them? And we tackle a different topic each month. And that mastermind, the objective of that is really to bring team leaders together so that they can learn from one another and so that they can implement on a given topic. All three very different purposes, all three very different audiences, right? So when we talk about objective, the clearer you are on the net outcome that you want from your mastermind, the better you're going to be in terms of the facilitator, the participants, and the structure of that mastermind. And so speaking of the participants, this is a big thing to contemplate. Right? We got to be as specific as we can. And here we're going to talk a little bit about dynamic tension. right? You want to do two things at once that kind of conflict and compete with one another. And what I mean is this: when you talk about inviting the right target audience, you would like to invite the whole idea of birds of a feather flock together. You'd like to invite the people who are going to be at the same production level with the same kinds of challenges to come together to talk. So, for example, when we talk about masterminds that I've done in the past, or part of in the past, we've grouped agents by production level, $10 to $20 million producers here, $30 to $40 million producers there, so on and so forth. So that the people who are together in the room really are sharing a commonality of challenges and concerns. The more similar they can be in production level, when we're talking about productivity masterminds, the more similar they can be in production level, the better. That said, ensuring that you have sufficient number of people in the room is important, right? So you want to go targeted, but not too granular. If you're in a rural area, for example, and you want to do a team leader mastermind for $50 million plus producers, you may not have that many $50 million plus team leaders in your rural market. So you may need to expand based on geographic constraints or what have you. In such cases, consider, instead of excluding people from the room, instead maybe consider grouping people at tables, $100 million producers over at this table, $50 million producers over here, and so on and so forth. And that way you can get those folks masterminding together in small group conversations and yet still fill a room with great participants. That's a great way of handling this. We do this regularly in the team mastery masterminds that I do. We have a different topic each month, and so we have a revolving cast of characters that'll come in. And so one month when we go to do our breakouts, we might do 25 million and below, 25 to 50 million, 50 million to 100, so on and so forth. Or the next month, depending upon who's in that room, we might do 35 million and below instead of 25 million and below. Again, that dynamic tension of making sure that we're bringing like people together to help problem solve without getting too granular. And if you're asking, well, why do we want to bring like-minded people together if it's not rather obvious? If you can imagine a $10 million solo agent in a mastermind at a table with a $100 million or $150 million team leader, that's not going to be a great conversation. Maybe the $10 million solo agent will really enjoy getting to pick the brain of somebody who's been where they're at and grown beyond it. That $100 million or $150 million team leader, they can learn a couple of things from that solo agent for sure if they're curious and open. But they've got a distinct set of challenges. And so that's why we want to bring those folks together that are like-minded. Selecting the topic is another big thing here, right? So making sure that we are selecting the topic, because that's going to mean not only are they engaging in the room, but do they even show up to begin with? So my rule of thumb here is to let the participants decide what topics we're going to talk about now. And now we can do that in two ways. One is we can select the topic in advance. We can use tools like Google Forms, FormStack, SurveyMonkey to take a poll among people who we're considering having in the mastermind. What do you want to talk about? And that's a great way of deciding in advance, what are we going to talk about? And that way we're not wasting time in the room. One drawback to this that I want to make sure you're aware of is, and I'll use team mastery. So we decide the topics in advance. And because of that, we have a revolving cast of characters because on any given month, one of the regulars that comes may not really be drawn to that topic. They may feel like they've already got that figured out. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of, that when you call out the topic ahead of time, you're going to get people who are really enthusiastic about that topic. And then you're going to get people who don't really care about that particular topic. Selecting the topic during the event is another thing that you can do as well. One of the things I like to use is a tool like Slido. That's sli.do, which is a tool that allows you to ask participants a question, and they can go to a website on their phone right there in the room, and they can tell you the topics that they want to talk about. And the other cool thing about Slido is that the other folks can then upvote any particular answer, meaning if one agent says open houses and everybody else wants to do open houses, they can all say, yes, I like that, let's do that. Now, this approach may increase attendance, but you may lack consensus on the topic, and it may take a long time to get consensus on the topic. So a few thoughts about this. In small groups, you can have each person stand up and introduce themselves, tell where they're from, their production level, and what their big challenges are, right? And then you can take everybody's challenge and then you can amalgamate it and kind of group topics together and then decide, okay, well, everybody seemed to want to talk about this, right? That's in small groups. If you're trying to do that in a large group, it's going to take too long. So in larger groups, using tools like Slido to gather up both those topics can be good. One thing you're going to notice, so when I've done this in the past with like flip charts, right? I'll say, what do you guys want to talk about? And one person will say open houses, another person will say geographic farming, another person will say social media. And I'll say, great, sounds like what we really want to talk about here are lead generation topics, right? So here's lead generation. Here's the 3 topics y'all just suggested. Any other big major groups that you want to talk about? Oh yeah, I want to talk about hiring a first assistant. Okay, great. Then I can then ask the room, hey, which of these 2 groups do you want to talk about first? Well, I want to talk about lead gen first. Okay, well, you gave me 3 topics. Which one of these, open houses, social media, geo farming, do you really want to talk about first? Which one second? Which one third? Now we have our marching orders. Now we can get after it. A good food for thought here, when we talk about timing, it's really going to dictate how many topics we can attack, but that doesn't matter. When we get the topics on the board, we can decide where we're going to spend our time and then push the other topics to a future mastermind together. All right, so determining the action plan. This is great, right? Because what we want is to get people into action, not just to have a few ideas floating around in the room. So think about takeaways. Now, takeaways can be very simple. I've been in masterminds where I've had a scribe at the front of the room who was taking notes with a Word document that was up on a screen being projected so everybody could see that that scribe is taking notes on everything being said. That's cool because not only do you have a deliverable at the end that you can give everybody to thank them for coming. Hey, here's the Word document. You can even take pictures of the flip charts and put that into the Word document so everybody has that to refresh their memory. The other thing that's cool about that is that they can see that, oh, I can relax. I don't need to sit here and take copious notes. I can pay attention. I can be part of the conversation because that's being done for me. Now, AI has made this easier. One word about AI is that if you're going to use AI to transcribe, it's great because it'll not only give you the transcription, but like I use Tactic, it'll give you summary bullet points and things like that. What it does require is a good microphone and audio recording, right? And that means as people are sharing, which they should be talking more than me, you're either going to have to put that microphone in their face, which means you're going to need mic runners to quickly run to this person, that person, or you're going to have to repeat everything that's said by each individual, which can be a pain as you're doing this. So the deliverables, though, can be more pointed than that. So I've done a mastermind on teams where the mastermind was all about team roles, defining job descriptions, right? I have my assistant do this. What do you have your assistant do? Ooh, I like that. Let's build that into a bigger job description. Not only did we do individual roles, but we also did an overall organization chart, right? And the exercise was you draw out your org today, and then what should that look like in 3 years when you grow to whatever you're trying to grow. So they walked out of there with great job descriptions and a clear kind of sense of the future. That's a cool deliverable to be able to take out of a mastermind experience. Being clear on the takeaways is really going to help your group focus their discussion to arrive at such a deliverable, both in the small group exercises and just in general in the overall mastermind. Setting the dates and the time. Now, dates are going to be a matter of convenience for you and your group, but on that topic, you will want to decide, is this going to be an ongoing mastermind? And if so, how often are we going to meet? What I love about ongoing masterminds is that you get familiar with people, not only in terms of being able to open up and share because you like these individuals, you want to help them, but also, too, you start to learn that, oh, Bob over there is really good with tech. So anytime there's a tech topic, let's make sure Bob is speaking on the matter. Right. Now on time, that's another story. And this is something that we really need to be aware of. As a general rule here, one topic can take 60 to 90 minutes. So Team Mastery, the team leader mastermind I'm part of each month, that's a 90-minute mastermind. And we talk about one topic each time. right? Now, if you're going to do a 3-hour mastermind, that really means that you're going to only be able to do about 3 topics. My advice would be to have 4 or 5 that you chart out either ahead of time or during the event. And that way, number 4 and 5, if you don't get to them, well, we can push that to next mastermind. But if you do get done with the first 3 early, well, now you've got something else that you can talk about. Selecting the room and location. So here you might want to decide about whether or not you want multiple masterminds. So I mentioned that I help lead the top 250 solo agent mastermind. Well, we also have the top 250 team leader mastermind. And oftentimes we start that mastermind in a combined experience. So at eXpCon, for example, we had the top 250 teams, the top 250 solo agents come early. And we had Chris Voss, the amazing speaker on negotiations, come and start us off in the morning talking about that. We had some other speakers as well. Then in the afternoon, we split up. The team leaders stayed in one room, the solo agents went to another, and we had separate masterminds. So consider whether or not you need multiple rooms. If you're doing this virtually, Zoom, for example, allows you to do breakout rooms, which is great. Just make sure you understand that technology before you go into the mastermind, so you're not trying to figure it out on the fly. It's easy, it's just not that easy. For in-person meetings, securing locations, consider things like your local board associations. My friend Elizabeth Riley, she does the AHA Club, Agents Helping Agents, here in Austin, Texas, each month at the Austin Board of Realtors. They have a beautiful facility. She pays to rent out one of their big conference rooms, holds about 150, 250 people, and that's where we meet each month. It's highly recommended, if you're going to be getting a meeting space, that you consider the layout of the room. If you're talking to an event planner about the meeting space, they're going to ask you, do you want theater, classroom, U-shape, or banquet? Often referred to as banquet is the round tables, right? What I like for masterminds are banquets, because that enables me to easily do small group conversations where you've got 8 to 10 people in a table that then can talk with one another, and then we can bring that back as we clear the exercise. We'll talk about that in a minute. They can then kind of have those small group conversations and then come back to the large group. That's especially important when you're doing masterminds in person, to be able to leverage those types of things. Invite participants. Well, that seems kind of obvious, right? But how you invite them matters. Making sure they understand that there's exclusivity. So, for example, with Team Mastery each month, we're really clear that this is a team leader only mastermind. No aspiring team leaders and no team members. We want to be real. We want to be vulnerable. We want to share our actual challenges without having to worry about, feelings of our teams and things like that. The old adage too, that birds of a feather flock together, is very true. If you aren't communicating some form of exclusivity, people will think, well, then I'm just going to be sitting next to a brand new agent, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with having a great new agent mastermind. But if you're trying to attract top producers to a top producer mastermind, they want to know only other top producers will be in the room. So communicating production levels and things of that nature is great. One of the other things you'll see here on the slide, so I mentioned the mastermind we're going to do next week. We've got my friends Katrina Amaral and Phil Sexton. They're going to be our guest speakers, and we'll talk about seeding the conversation in a second. But I want people to know these 2 rock stars are going to be coming and sharing what they do to hold their teams accountable and coach their teams. That can be a great way to promote the fact that you've got amazing learning opportunities for people coming into the mastermind. Preparing the room and equipment, make sure you got everything you need. Do you need stools and a stage for your guests? Do you need flip charts? I would highly recommend having flip charts at a minimum. Those sticky little 3M flip charts that you can peel off and stick on the walls so people continue to see them as you're going. So you'll need markers then as well. Do you need stickies at the table, like little Post-it notes? Do you need them to have blank pieces of paper that they can write on? Are you going to have them create some sort of formal plan after the mastermind? And if so, can you give them a worksheet that they can use for that? Have all those things set up. And of course, arrive early so that you can inspect what you expect and make sure that everything that you want is ready to go. Now, facilitating an impactful mastermind. So we talked about the planning and preparing. Now we're talking about day of. And again, if you're following along in your book there, you can see the list of some of the things we're about to talk about. All right, first let's talk about facilitation. 12 essential skills. And these are really important. When we talk about these, the level and quality of your facilitation of a mastermind is going to be, again, one of those three major pillars of the success of that mastermind. And so upping our game, what I'm going to encourage you to do is, as we go through these, is if you're sitting there going, oh, I don't do that, I don't do that, I don't do that. Don't try to do all of these things at a higher level in your next mastermind. Do as best you can, but really focus on a few of these at a time and grow your skills of facilitation as we go. So the first two, active listening and effective communication. In the simplest sense that I can say, your role as a mastermind facilitator, your role is to get the conversation going and keep the conversation going, period. Right? And so when it comes to active listening and effective communication, what you have to understand is we're talking about helping them effectively communicate, not necessarily us effectively communicating. Obviously, we need to be effective communicators, but we actually have to help those. Ask you a question. I'm betting that you have a friend where if you ask them a question, they will give you a 10-minute answer, whereas another friend might give you a one-sentence answer. And oftentimes that's because people will process out loud. Again, we're asking questions in a big group setting. We're putting people on the spot. Even people who have a direct answer, understand what you just asked and have a great answer to it, may ramble a little bit in giving it to you. Active listening here, what we're talking about is being able to paraphrase, summarize, and ask clarifying questions. In all cases, and remember, our job is to get the conversation going and keep it going. So the first things out of our mouth, whenever anybody shares with us, should be some version of thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for contributing that. That's awesome. Then our role as the facilitator is to actively listen. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is blank. Is that right? And also effectively communicate. Sometimes, again, if people are giving a long answer, you can say things like, you know what, that's brilliant, but I think I got lost in the middle there. If you were going to put that on a bumper sticker, what would that bumper sticker say? And help them just get to the point, right? In a loving and kind way. We're not insulting anybody. We're just trying to get to that succinct point, whether they do it or whether we actively listen and do it for them. Questioning techniques. We're going to talk a little bit about the Socratic method, but I really want you, as a takeaway from today, I would love for you to go look into Socratic questions. You can just Google it. The Wikipedia article on Socratic questions is great. There's great books on it as well. There's 6 Socratic questions, and we'll talk about that in a bit. The number one skill that we have as a mastermind facilitator is in the quality of questions that we ask. And so this is a big, big skill. Conflict resolution. Hopefully there's no fistfights in our mastermind, but there will be disagreements, and that's fine. But sometimes people take that a little bit too far, and that's our opportunity to step in and make sure that it remains a safe place. That starts with us saying at the beginning, hey, this needs to be a safe environment. It's okay for us to disagree. It's not okay for us to be mean about it. Is everybody cool with that? Right? And then we may have to step in even after we've set that kind of groundwork and say, you know what, I'm not really hearing a right or a wrong answer here. What I'm really hearing, this is a matter of perspective, or this is a matter of our markets being different, or this is a matter of our behavioral styles, our target customer, our business models being different. And let's just respect the fact that we have different solutions to any given problem. It sounds like you're solving it one way and you're solving it another. Time management. Again, this is one of those things we want to ask for permission up front to be able to step in and say, hey guys, we have a limited amount of time together today. I want to make sure that we stay on track. Do I have your permission to step in and say, hey, we're maybe getting into the weeds a little too much, or hey, that sounds like a great answer, or a great conversation between you two, but I think that's going to be fruitful for you two, but the rest of us really want to get back to this. Is it okay if we switch back to this topic? Just ask for that permission and be kind and gracious when you need to invoke that permission. Speaking of being kind and gracious, empathy and motivation. Again, we want to make people feel safe in this conversation, safe sharing, safe being willing to speak up. You know, the old Seinfeld episode that he talks about, the number one fear is fear of public speaking, and death is number 2, which means speaking at a funeral is even the most fearful thing, right? People are very fearful about speaking up. in these types of environments. So make sure that as people are sharing that you're being empathetic. I'm betting others in the room can really relate to that. Anybody else here feeling that too? I was part of a top 50 solo agent mastermind in Canada. These are our top 50 agents. And one of the amazing agents up there, again, one of our top 50 agents said, sometimes I feel like I'm on an island, right? I thought we were going to talk about lead generation. I thought we were going to talk about listings. And I asked the question, what do you want to talk about? And that's what she wanted to talk about. And the second that she said it, by the way, a bunch of other agents in the room said, yeah, me too. Can we talk about that? What a great conversation. By the way, that was a fantastic conversation. But if I hadn't slowed down and been empathetic in the moment, I might have just totally missed that. Flexibility. Sometimes we start talking about X, but everybody starts drifting towards Y. And so just asking the question out loud, hey, we started talking about X. Seems like we want to talk about Y. What do you guys think? And let them be flexible for you. Problem solving, making sure that we're figuring out who in the room has solved the challenges and then getting them to share step by step what they did. Reminding everybody that this is an answer, it's not the answer. And so as people share different solutions, the key there is to look about which solution fits us, our business, our personality, and can we pick and choose a little bit from this solution, a little bit from that to arrive at a bigger solution. Facilitation tools and proficiency, we've talked about that. Zoom, your even whiteboards and 3M poster stickies, making sure that you have all those tools. Group dynamic awareness. Again, some people are going to be really shy. And so when we're in a group setting, we're going to say things like, hey, those who haven't shared yet, anything to add to that? A word note on this, I never call out people by name. Because if they're shy, I don't want to put them on the spot. But what I will do when I ask that question, those who haven't shared anything to add to that, I will briefly make eye contact with a few people who haven't talked, looking for them to kind of say, yeah, I'm a little more willing to speak, so I can then allow them to do so. In smaller groups, making sure that we're walking around and asking the table, hey, has everyone at your table had something to share yet in the discussion? Oftentimes, they'll look at the individuals who haven't yet spoken. Goal setting and accountability, making sure that if we're doing an ongoing mastermind and we're committing to actions after a particular mastermind, open the next one by asking, did we do it? What happened? If so, great. What were the results? If not, why? What got in the way? Bringing that kind of accountability to action. And then finally, feedback and evaluation. I want to give you a great question to ask at the end of your mastermind to help level it up. Here's the question. Hey, everybody, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being awesome, 1 being not so awesome, 10 being awesome, give today's session a rating. And if it's less than 10, that's great. Let it be less than 10. I just want to know what one thing could we do differently next time to make it a 10. You will get some amazing answers and it will help evolve your mastermind over time. All right. Welcome participants into the room. Get there early, get everything set up. And then as people are coming in, introduce yourself. If you already know them, because it's an ongoing mastermind, high five. How's the family? How's everything going with you? And really get people excited. Pro tip for you as you're welcoming people into the room. If you don't do anything, people will sit in the back of the room. And your front tables will either remain bare or won't fill up until the very end the person comes in the room. Here's a pro tip. Go back to those back tables and 1 or 2 or both. Push the chairs up against the table so they're kind of leaning against it. The universal sign for this seat's taken. So push the chairs for those back tables up and or get a little table card that says reserved on it. You didn't say reserved for what? You just said reserved. And then as the other tables fill up, great. You can take that placard off or you can pull those chairs down and allow people to finally fill up those last chairs. Conduct an icebreaker. I'm not going to go into this here. You've got over a dozen different icebreakers in your material. There's a little link there that describes each of the various different icebreakers. This is about getting energy, fun, excitement. It's also about making sure people are networking and introducing themselves to one another. By the way, my favorite in here is Rochambeau. Rochambeau. If you don't know what that is, take a look at the activities. That's my favorite, but all of these are great. I've used them all and they're all great. Reviewing the agenda. Make sure you have an agenda, especially if you're doing multi-hours. hey, from 10 to 11, we're going to cover topic 1. From 11 to 12, we're going to cover topic 2. Then we'll break for lunch. 1 to 2, we'll do topic 3. Now, y'all get to choose what the topics are, but let's just try to keep on track for our timing so we can hit as many as possible. Setting the stage. Making sure that people are open to the experience. And what I mean by that is you will get some attendees who are convinced that they have the secret sauce. And they will be back in the back of the room, arms folded, and they will be quiet and not willing to share their great ideas. Here's a few things that I've done in the past to create the atmosphere of fun and levity around this, while also getting them to unfold their arms, to relax their shoulders and engage. The first I've done is back when Google used to allow you to see how many search results there was for a search. I went and Googled Big Mac secret sauce recipe. By the way, 10 million results. 10 million results. So my point, and I would share that. I took a screenshot of that, put it up on the screen. My point to them was, hey, friends, your secret sauce ain't so secret. And by the way, that doesn't matter. Just remind them, it's not what you know, it's how well you execute. Eric Thomas, innovation is applauded, execution is worshipped. Right? And they all know this inherently. Every agent in their board has been trained. How many agents in their board actually execute? Help them recognize it's not about having the strategy that no agent knows. It's about how well they're executing it is really going to define things. The other thing too is I use the Rudyard Kipling quote from the Jungle Book. The strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. And I'll often say things like, "Hey, how many realtors are in this board? Anywhere from 8,000 to 30,000, depending upon the board. How many realtors are in the board? Okay, well, how many in this room? 100, 200? All right, how many transactions were done last year? Thousands and tens of thousands of transactions. Okay, if we were all to go get the tens of thousands of transactions and split them up among the 100 of us in this room, is that enough for us all? Okay, so can we treat everybody who's not in the room as our competitor and treat everybody who is in the room as our ally, and make sure that we're helping our allies grow? This is our pack. Let's run together. And I use the Kipling quote because it creates that sort of energy and gets people to really open up. However you choose to do it, make sure that you do address that kind of negative thought that people have, because they will walk into your mastermind thinking that, competitors in my market are in here. I've got the secret sauce all figured out. So get them laughing about that kind of idea. We talked about narrowing down the topics with the various technology tools here. We talked a little bit about preceding the discussion, and I do this a lot. This allows participants to start thinking in advance, where I have either an interview or a panel up front to talk about how they do it. Now, again, I'm very clear to say that, hey, this is an answer or a few answers. It is not the answer. So as you're hearing them talk about what they're talking about, how they do things, I want you to be thinking about how you do things differently from what they're saying, and what things they're doing that you're not doing that you want to incorporate. That can get that conversation going in a very powerful way. Usually, if you go from a cold start and ask a question out loud, it's going to be a few seconds before people respond, because they're processing, they're thinking about things. When you precede the conversation, man, you start getting questions, first of all, to your interview panel or persons, but then also too, you get people going, I noticed he said that he does things like this. I do things this way because X. Gives them that opportunity to compare and contrast. By the way, when you have somebody who's going to precede the conversation, there's this concept called I forget the name of the official concept, but it essentially is that you understand things so well that you forget how well you understand things, right? The idea that you know things that you wouldn't even think to share with people. And so I was talking with a friend of mine who is an amazing agent. She does over 300 deals a year. So that's great. How do you do that? And she said, well, Facebook. So anyways, my husband and I was like, whoa. Hold a second. What do you mean Facebook? So whenever I talk to my interviewers and my panelists before, when I'm preceding the conversation, I talk to them and I say, hey, listen, I want you to pretend like I'm your little brother, one that you actually like, and I'm going to slow you down because I'm going to put my last dollar on doing what you tell me to go do. And so I've got to be successful because I got to feed my family. So when you talk, what exactly do you do? Why do you do this and not that? What order do you do it in? How often? Who's the audience? How much do you spend? What's the call to action? Is there a follow-up plan? Or what should I do first? right? Making sure that they're really clear. People should walk away from that conversation being able to implement what they're telling you that they're doing in their business. Preparing for the breakout conversations. So we can have a large group conversation using a lot of the techniques that I've talked about. Oftentimes we will use small groups though to get at some things, right? You can quickly have people give me your top 5 ideas for generating seller listings. Give me your top 5 ideas for this. Go as a group, right? When you do this, you really have to be clear with them, and it helps to have at each table a leader and a scribe. The leader is going to make sure people stay on track in the conversation. The scribe is going to transcribe what takes place. And this is really important because afterward, we're going to clear the exercise, meaning we're going to have the groups share. And it's really helpful to have things written out so people don't, rely on their memory, which we've just seen can be faulty, but also too, so that they're takeaways that they can take with them. Now, a word about this. If you ask a table, hey, who's going to be your scribe and who's going to be your leader? More often than not, people are going to go, not it, right? So some tips here that you can use, pick an arbitrary thing. What I like to do is birthdays, not birth years. Nobody wants to admit how old they are, but birthdays in the calendar year. So for example, hey, leaders, you're the one whose birthday comes first in the year. So January 1st birthday, you're the leader of the group. Scribe, your birthday is the one who comes last in the year. So if your birthday is December 31st, congratulations, you're the scribe. Right? So let them figure out who's going to be the scribe and the leader that way. And you don't have to deal with picking somebody or, forcing somebody to do that. Now, with the group leaders, you really have to make eye contact with them. And in fact, I'll say, group leaders, I really need you to pay attention here. Everybody pay attention, especially group leaders. Here's what we're going to go do. Scribes, here's the outcome that we want from your group, whatever that is. Clearly outline that for them and let them know then how much time they're going to have to go have those conversations. Facilitating the breakout discussions then becomes a lot easier. So making sure that they're going to arrive at the deliverable. Really quickly, if you want a great way to get them to create a deliverable, give them a three-part template, so to speak, to give you the deliverable. First, what's the objective? Well, we want to hire a first assistant. Okay, great. What are the 3 strategies, 3 major pillars we're going to use to go hire that first assistant? Well, first, we're going to have to go out and find great candidates. Then we're going to have to interview them. Then we're going to have to onboard the one that we choose. Okay, great. Now, for each one of those pillars, what are the major tactics? Well, if we're going to go find some great candidates, we need to create a great job description. We need to post it everywhere we can. We need to reach out to our network. Who do they know? So on and so forth, right? That can be a great, easy way for them to come back with something meaningful from their table that then is an action plan that they can take away as well. And what's interesting is as one table shares their action plan, another one shares theirs, everybody starts crossing off things or writing in even better answers that they're hearing from the room. Now, you see here it says circulate the room twice. Whenever I put people into small groups, I do 2 things, right? So I've communicated clearly to the leaders and the scribes what everybody's going to be doing. Then I say break. Tell them how much time. I can even put go to Google and Google 15-minute timer on the screen if we have a screen in the room. But then I'm going to spend the first 2 minutes, I'm going to go to every table on that room. And what I'm doing in that first 2 minutes is I'm just quickly walking up saying, okay, leader, do you know what you're doing? And I want them to tell me, yes, we're doing this. Scribe, do you know the outcome that is expected? Do you know what you're doing? Yes, we're supposed to fill out this worksheet or we're supposed to give you a top 5, whatever. Great, I'll be back. And I go around all the tables as quickly as I can. What often happens is somebody asks a really great question because I wasn't clear enough. And that allows me the opportunity to turn my mic back on and go, hey, everybody, just a real quick point of clarification. Sally had a great question over here. I want to address that and make sure you all know. And then I can go back. That's the first time around the room. The second time around the room, once I've done that, now I'm going around to the groups and taking a little bit more time. I'm listening to the conversation. I'm looking for great ideas. And I'm also, too, I'm making sure that everybody's staying on track. Oftentimes when you put 8 individuals into a conversation, even when they know what to do, They're going to talk about Sunday's football game. They're going to talk about their kids and all that. Now, a little bit of that is okay, but make sure they stay on track. Keep telling them, okay, 10 minutes left. Hey, scribes, I'm not seeing a lot written on those papers. 10 minutes left. Give them time warnings, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and make sure that you keep circulating around the room so that people can ask you side questions. Now, when we're doing this, just a few points of clarification. What we are not doing is answering every question that we ask. Right? We're not telling a bunch of war stories or telling our answers to these, right? We are not speaking. They are. We want them to have their large group discussions here I'm talking about. We want them to be the ones sharing. Again, I'm only talking as much as I need to get that conversation going. So what we are doing is we're asking clarifying questions. What do you mean by that? Did you mean this or did you mean that? We're also asking who in the room has solved this challenge before? Okay, what results did you get when you solved it? Great. So how did you do it? What were those steps? What were those details? And then we're also looking out for people who were speaking too long and making sure that we step in at the appropriate time and get them to just sum it up into a couple of words or phrases. And we're also making sure that we are going and hitting all the folks in the room seeking that wisdom. Again, don't call out anybody in particular, but make sure to call out, hey, there's a few folks we haven't heard from. What do you think about this? I mentioned the Socratic questions. Here are the 6 Socratic question types: clarifying thinking and understanding, challenging assumptions, examining evidence and rationale, considering alternative perspectives, considering implications and consequences, and the meta question. If you're not familiar with these, each one of these 6 have a bunch of sub questions. So for example, clarifying thinking and understanding. Can you give me an example of that? Could you explain further? Are you saying this or are you saying that? And what's the problem that you're trying to solve when you say that? Those are all examples. Now, each one of these 6 has a ton of little questions underneath. I would really encourage you to understand the Socratic questions and to use these regularly in your mastermind facilitation. They will bring about such great discussions. Okay, getting near the end here. So after each of the exercises, the small group exercises, or even the large group conversations, you want to be sure to clear the conversation. What do I mean by that? Well, when the small group comes, you're going to want to get each group to report back. Cool thing about this is if you've got tables of various production levels, now the lower production level tables get to hear what the higher production level tables were talking about and the solutions that they're bringing and why. That's cool. The other thing too is that, one group may have a great idea and another group may have a great idea. And then now both groups get to hear both great ideas. High quality audio and AI, that's great to have for the transcript where people can go back, but they won't be able to get the small group discussions going on. So this is a great way to really bring that out. You may be pressed for time in certain situations. So you might have told them, hey, give me your top 5 ideas for generating seller listings. You may get into it and maybe one table talked pretty long. So the subsequent tables, you might have to tell me, hey, sorry, I can only take your one idea. Give me that in 60 seconds or less. Wrapping up, making sure at the end of this, people are walking out with clarity about what to go do. And just asking the simple question, hey, when you walk out of the room, what are you going to go do first on this topic? Okay, what are you going to go do second? And let multiple people answer that question, each of those. And what you'll get is a really good sense of first this, then that. It can be a great way for again, getting people into action and making sure that if we have an ongoing mastermind, what are the expectations about what we're going to do before we come back together next time? Follow up after the mastermind. Well, this is a great way to both reward the people who showed up and also tease the people who weren't there this time to get them to come next time. So again, if we're taking notes, which is a great thing, making sure we're sending out the notes that we've taken, maybe even pictures of the flip chart papers that we've been drawing on in the room, sending that to reward the people for coming as a great walk away. Also, too, with the people who weren't in the room, be careful with this, right? If you're giving people who aren't in the room all that stuff, it may make the people who were in the room think, well, I don't have to show up then, right? I can just stay at home and I'll get all the goodness. but teasing certain details. Hey, if you didn't join us last time, man, you really missed X. Also, too, when it comes to your next ongoing mastermind, the analogy I use is the $10 million suitcase. If I told you, hey, join us for next month's mastermind because we're going to talk about X, maybe you show up, maybe you don't. If I told you, hey, be sure to join us for next month's mastermind where I'm going to give you a suitcase full of $10 million, I guarantee you're going to show up for that mastermind. Now, we don't want to overpromise, right? Earnings claims and whatnot. But in a sense, you are giving them a suitcase full of $10 million. You just have to make sure they connect to the dots of next month's topic or next quarter's topic, whatever the pace is. Make sure that they understand the benefits of that mastermind, not just the topics of it, right? We don't sell features, we sell benefits. And so sell the benefits of your ongoing masterminds to them. All right. To help our eXp agents, maybe even attract other agents to eXp, or at least bring them into the room to get their wisdom into the conversation. What a great way for lifting everybody's boat in that local market. So if I can ever help you, please do let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to say for all of us here at eXp University and all of us here at eXp headquarters, thank you very much for being part of this. And thank you very much for being part of eXp. We appreciate you. Be safe, and we'll see you next Thursday for the next eXp Executive Master.